Welcome to my channel. Today's story unfolds in Okinawa, a stunning island in Japan, often called a tropical paradise. This is the tale of Rina Shimabukuro, a young woman whose disappearance in 2015 became a national tragedy. She moved to Okinawa from the mainland to work at a company providing internet and television services on U.S. military bases. She met Kenneth Franklin Gatson, an American serviceman, and they began a relationship. They rented an apartment and started living together, enjoying weekends and spending time together. Friends noted Rina became more open in his company, sharing her love for singing and dancing. Rina often messaged Kenneth via the Line app. She dreamed of a big family, once saying she wanted 6 children. But as 2015 progressed, her friends began to feel uneasy. On April 28, after working a long day, Rina left their apartment, telling Kenneth she was going for a walk along the canal, a route she frequently took. He agreed, assuming she'd return later. She didn't reply to any further messages, and despite missing person posters, no decisive changes followed. The police quickly arrived, gathering information. Investigators meticulously reviewed surveillance footage from the night of Rina's disappearance. Hundreds of vehicles were recorded, but one stood out, a red SUV. The owner was identified as Kenneth Franklin Gatson. He had parked his car near the canal, claiming Rina was going for a walk. The footage showed the SUV driving erratically around the time of her disappearance. This placed him near the scene, and the moment felt destined to investigators. Weeks later, a search of the area led to a black suitcase. Inside was the decomposing body of Rina Shimabukuro. The heat of the Okinawan climate had taken its toll. The discovery ignited outrage across the island, and the incident quickly escalated to the highest political levels in Japan. Rina's parents demanded the death penalty, a sentence still in use in Japan. Kenneth Franklin Gatson was charged and brought to trial. He had managed to enlist in the Marine Corps, and his defense argued that the crime was impulsive. However, prosecutors presented compelling evidence linking him to Rina's disappearance. The court ultimately sentenced Kenneth to life imprisonment. Despite the verdict, the question lingered: why did this happen? Why did a seemingly ordinary couple's life end in such a brutal and senseless way? The case of Rina Shimabukuro remains a dark chapter in Okinawan history. The courtroom hung heavy with unspoken grief. Kenneth Gatson, his shoulders slumped, avoided the direct gaze of Rina's parents. The prosecutor's voice, sharp and unwavering, detailed the evidence, the surveillance footage, the suitcase, the forensic analysis. It painted a grim picture of a crime born from a fleeting, obsessive infatuation. Gatson's defense continued to portray the act as a moment of profound weakness, a lapse in judgment fueled by an unhealthy fixation. But the prosecution relentlessly dismantled their arguments, presenting witness testimonies that contradicted Gatson's claims of a casual encounter. The jury listened intently, their expressions unreadable. Rina's mother clutched a worn photograph of her daughter, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks. The weight of the evidence, the finality of the discovery, seemed to crush the small space around them. The air crackled with tension, the silence punctuated only by the occasional rustle of papers or a stifled sob. The trial stretched on for days, each revelation chipping away at the fragile facade of Gatson's defense. Rina's father traced the outline of the silver locket with his thumb. It was a gift from Rina on her 16th birthday, containing a tiny picture of the two of them, smiling. He hadn't taken it out of its velvet box since the news broke. The locket felt cold against his skin, a constant reminder of the vibrant life stolen too soon. He remembered Rina's infectious laughter, her dreams of becoming a marine biologist, her unwavering kindness. A fierce resolve hardened his gaze. He wouldn't let Rina's memory fade. He would fight for justice, not just for her, but for all the victims of senseless violence. He glanced at his wife, her eyes red and swollen. He squeezed her hand, offering silent comfort. The pain was a constant ache, but it fueled his determination. He knew the legal process was arduous, but he clung to the hope that justice would prevail, that Rina's killer would be held accountable for his actions. The island of Okinawa, usually a haven of tranquility and beauty, felt tainted by tragedy. The vibrant coral reefs, the turquoise waters, the lush green landscapes, all seemed muted by the shadow of Rina's death. Tourism, the island's lifeblood, suffered a temporary downturn. Tourists hesitated, a sense of unease lingering in the air. Local businesses struggled, and the community mourned a loss that resonated deeply. The incident sparked conversations about safety, about the vulnerability of women, and about the importance of vigilance. Efforts were made to increase patrols in secluded areas, and community watch programs were strengthened. Yet, the scars remained, a constant reminder of the darkness that could lurk beneath the surface of paradise. The beauty of Okinawa felt bittersweet, forever intertwined with the memory of Rina. The prison cell was a stark contrast to the life Kenneth Gatson had once envisioned. The cold concrete walls, the barred window offering a sliver of a gray sky, the oppressive silence, it was a world away from the freedom he had taken for granted. The weight of his actions pressed down on him, a constant, suffocating burden. He spent hours staring at the wall, lost in a maze of regret and self-recrimination. The initial bravado had long dissipated, replaced by a profound sense of emptiness. He missed the simple things, the warmth of the sun, the taste of good food, the company of others. But most of all, he missed the possibility of a future that Rina had irrevocably stolen. He was a ghost of his former self, haunted by the consequences of his impulsive act. The trial had stripped him of his dignity, his reputation, and ultimately, his freedom. Rina's parents stood silently by her grave, the setting sun casting long shadows across the cemetery. They placed a bouquet of her favorite lilies on the freshly laid stone. Tears streamed down their faces, a mixture of grief and lingering love. They spoke softly, sharing memories of Rina, her smile, her laughter, her unwavering spirit. The pain of her absence was a constant ache, a void that could never be filled. But amidst the sorrow, there was a flicker of pride in the justice that had been served. They knew that Rina's memory would live on, not just in their hearts, but as a symbol of strength and resilience. They vowed to keep her spirit alive, to honor her dreams, and to continue fighting for a world where no other family would have to endure the pain they had experienced. The quiet of the cemetery was broken only by their soft sobs and the gentle rustling of leaves, a poignant testament to a life tragically cut short. The silence in the cell was a heavy blanket, broken only by the occasional clang of metal from the corridor. Kenneth traced the outline of a small crack in the concrete wall with his finger, a futile attempt to find something, anything, to occupy his mind. He replayed the events leading to his imprisonment, each detail sharp and agonizing. Rina's laughter, the thrill of the deal, the careless disregard for the consequences. He hadn't intended for things to escalate so quickly, so violently. Now, the vibrant memories felt like shards of glass in his chest. He knew Rina's parents were devastated, and a cold knot of guilt tightened in his stomach. He had to find a way to atone, though the path forward seemed impossibly dark. A guard's footsteps echoed nearby, a stark reminder of his confinement. He closed his eyes, trying to conjure the image of Rina's smile, a desperate anchor in the overwhelming despair. He wouldn't let her memory be tarnished by his actions. He had to believe there was still a chance for redemption, a way to somehow make amends for the irreparable damage he had caused. The weight of his crime pressed down on him, a constant, suffocating burden. The soft sand shifted beneath Rina's mother's feet as she walked slowly along the shoreline. Her father walked beside her, his arm a silent comfort around her shoulders. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange, pink, and purple, a beautiful but melancholic backdrop to their grief. They hadn't spoken much since leaving the cemetery, the silence filled with unspoken sorrow. Rina had always loved the ocean, finding solace in its vastness and power. Now, the familiar rhythm of the waves felt like a mournful sigh. Her mother reached down and gently touched the lilies, their white petals a stark contrast to the darkening sand. She loved these so much, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Her father squeezed her shoulder. She lived a full life, he said, though the words offered little comfort. They both knew that a life cut short was a life unfulfilled, a future stolen. The island felt smaller, emptier without her vibrant spirit. They walked in quiet contemplation, the waves washing away the footprints of their loss, but not the ache in their hearts. The beauty of the sunset couldn't penetrate the darkness that had settled over their world. Days bled into weeks within the prison walls. Kenneth's restlessness grew, a constant energy simmering beneath his outwardly calm demeanor.
He spent hours pacing his small cell, his mind racing, searching for an escape, not just physical, but emotional. He'd managed to smuggle in a small, intricately carved wooden bird, a gift from Rena, a reminder of a happier time. It was a tangible link to the life he had destroyed, a constant source of both pain and motivation. He'd examine it repeatedly, tracing the delicate details with his fingers, remembering Rena's gentle smile as she'd given it to him. The bird represented freedom, something he desperately craved. It also represented the innocence he had lost, the trust he had betrayed. He knew escape was unlikely, but the bird fueled a different kind of rebellion, a determination to find a way to right his wrongs. He started observing the guards more closely, noting their routines, their weaknesses. A plan, however improbable, began to form in his mind. In a secluded room, far from the tranquility of Okinawa's beaches, a clandestine meeting was taking place. Isabella Rossi, a woman known for her ruthlessness and connections, leaned forward, her gaze fixed on the map of the island spread across the table. Across from her sat Marcus Bellwether, a man whose tailored suit couldn't conceal the weariness in his eyes. Gatson is proving more difficult than anticipated, Isabella stated, her voice smooth and controlled.
His silence is unsettling. Marcus sighed. He's a survivor, Isabella. And he's not stupid.
He knows he's in a precarious position.
Isabella tapped a finger on a point on the map.
We need him to cooperate. We need information regarding the other parties involved.
Marcus nodded slowly. I'm working on it. But it will take time. Gatson is fiercely protective of his secrets. The air in the room was thick with tension, the stakes high. The fate of more than just Kenneth Gatson hung in the balance. Under the cloak of a moonless night, Kenneth found his opportunity.
He'd meticulously planned his escape, utilizing the knowledge he'd gained from observing the guards. The wooden bird, clutched tightly in his hand, felt like a talisman, a symbol of the freedom he was fighting for. He'd managed to scale a wall, navigating the shadows with a desperate resolve. Now, standing on the rooftop, the cool night air on his skin, he looked out at the sprawling prison complex. It was a dangerous gamble, but he couldn't remain a prisoner of his past.
He had to find a way to make amends, to honor Rena's memory.
He took a deep breath, the scent of night air filling his lungs.
He wouldn't let Rena's death be in vain.
He would find a way to atone, even if it meant facing the consequences alone.
With a final, determined look, he prepared to descend into the darkness, a fugitive seeking redemption.
The wooden bird felt surprisingly light, almost ethereal, against his palm. Kenneth navigated the rough stone, his muscles screaming in protest, but the thought of freedom fueled his ascent.
Each handhold was tested, each movement deliberate.
He'd anticipated this moment for months, meticulously studying the prison's layout, identifying blind spots, memorizing guard rotations. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, something metallic.
A faint clang echoed from below, a sound he hadn't heard before.
He paused, listening intently. It could be a guard, or perhaps something else. He pressed on, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. Reaching the top, he pulled himself over the wall, landing silently in a dense thicket of bamboo. The cool night air filled his lungs, a stark contrast to the stale air of his cell. He glanced back at the prison, a dark silhouette against the starry sky.
He wasn't safe yet.
He needed to reach the rendezvous point, the old fisherman's shack on the coast.
Isabella's contact would be waiting. But the clang, it lingered in his mind.
A complication he hadn't foreseen. He moved with a practiced grace, honed by years of navigating difficult situations. The bamboo stalks swayed around him, creating an eerie rustling sound that masked his movements. He kept to the shadows, his eyes constantly scanning the perimeter.
The metallic clang had been unsettling, a jarring note in his carefully orchestrated escape.
He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He risked a glance over his shoulder and caught a fleeting glimpse of a figure disappearing into the deeper darkness of the forest. Tall, cloaked, and utterly silent. He quickened his pace, his senses on high alert.
Was it a guard, alerted to his escape? Or someone else entirely? Someone who knew about the wooden bird?
He reached a small stream and waded across, the cold water numbing his feet. He knew Isabella wouldn't risk a direct confrontation. This felt different. More personal. He adjusted his grip on the bird, a surge of determination coursing through him. He wouldn't be deterred. He had to find out who was watching him, and why. Isabella traced a line on the chart with a slender finger. The lantern light danced in her eyes, reflecting a sharp intelligence and unwavering resolve. She'd received word of Kenneth's escape, a welcome development, but the unexpected complication worried her. She'd anticipated a clean extraction, a swift departure. This felt messy. A shadow fell across the table, and a man stepped into the lantern light. It was her contact, a weathered fisherman named Kenzo. "He's here," she said, her voice low and steady. "But he's being followed." Kenzo nodded grimly. "I saw him. A figure in the woods. Moving with purpose." Isabella's jaw tightened. This wasn't just about getting Kenneth off the island anymore. Someone wanted him silenced. She leaned back in her chair, her gaze distant. "We need to be careful. Very careful." The wooden bird. It wasn't just a symbol of freedom. It was a target. He slipped into the shadows just beyond the shack, his senses on edge. The salty air filled his lungs, a welcome change from the prison stench, but the feeling of unease persisted. He saw them, Isabella and the fisherman, Kenzo, bathed in the warm glow of the lantern. He recognized the nautical chart, the familiar scent of the sea. He took a tentative step forward, then another. He needed to reach them, to explain what he'd seen, to warn them about the watcher in the woods. As he moved, his hand instinctively went to his jacket, to the wooden bird concealed beneath. He felt the smooth, worn wood beneath his fingers, a comforting presence in this uncertain moment. But as he reached for it, a voice cut through the night. "Looking for something?" Kenneth froze, his hand hovering inches from the bird. He slowly turned, his eyes meeting Isabella's. He saw not concern, but a strange, knowing glint in her eyes. Behind him, Isabella stepped forward, blocking his view of Kenzo. "You're not the only one who knows about the bird, Kenneth," she said, her voice soft but firm. "It's a key. A key to something far more valuable than your freedom." She reached out and gently took the wooden bird from his hand. He flinched, surprised by her touch. "The escape was only the first step," Isabella continued, her eyes never leaving his. "Now, the real journey begins." The smile on her lips widened slightly. He had escaped the prison, but he had walked straight into a different kind of danger. "You're not the only one looking for answers, Kenneth," Isabella said, her voice soft but firm. "Kenzo here has information that might be helpful." Kenneth's gaze flickered to Kenzo, then back to Isabella, suspicion clouding his features. He'd expected hostility, perhaps even violence, but this controlled exchange felt far more unsettling. The fisherman remained silent, his weathered face unreadable. Isabella's smile didn't reach her eyes. "We both know the circumstances surrounding your release. And we both have reasons to want to understand why." A gust of wind swept through the small clearing, rustling the leaves and carrying the scent of the sea. It felt like a prelude to something significant, something dangerous. Kenzo shifted slightly, a barely perceptible movement that suggested he was ready to speak. The lantern light flickered again, casting dancing shadows that seemed to rife with unspoken truths. Kenneth felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. He had a feeling this wasn't going to be the simple escape he'd envisioned. Isabella's composure was unnerving, she seemed to anticipate his every thought, every reaction. He wondered what secrets she held, and what price he would have to pay to uncover them. Kenzo's hands, rough and scarred from years at sea, moved with a deliberate slowness. He reached into the depths of his worn coat, his movements betraying none of the internal struggle that must be taking place. The sound of fabric rustling in the quiet night was amplified, drawing Kenneth's attention. Isabella watched him with an unwavering gaze, her expression impassive. The lantern light caught the glint of something metallic as Kenzo's hand emerged. It wasn't a weapon, as Kenneth had half expected, but a small, intricately carved wooden box. He held it out towards Isabella, then hesitated, his eyes meeting Kenneth's for a fleeting moment. There was a plea in those eyes, a silent request for understanding. The box seemed insignificant, yet it radiated an aura of importance, of untold stories. Kenneth found himself drawn in, his initial suspicion giving way to a flicker of curiosity. What could possibly be inside that box to warrant such guardedness? Isabella stepped forward, taking the box with a gentle touch. Her fingers lingered on Kenzo's for a brief second, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes. Isabella's fingers carefully opened the wooden box. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a tarnished silver locket. It was heart-shaped, intricately engraved with nautical symbols, anchors, compasses, and swirling waves. The metal was dull with age, but a faint shimmer hinted at its former brilliance. Isabella held the locket up to the lantern light, examining it closely. A faint smile touched her lips, a hint of sadness in her eyes. She flipped the locket open, revealing two tiny portraits, a young woman with kind eyes and a man with a resolute jaw. They looked familiar, yet Kenneth couldn't place them. "This belonged to my mother," Isabella said softly, her voice laced with a hint of melancholy. "She disappeared many years ago. The authorities declared it an accident, a boating mishap. But I never believed it." The locket felt heavy in her hand, imbued with a sense of loss and unresolved mystery. Kenneth realized that Isabella's quest for answers wasn't just about his escape, it was deeply personal, tied to a tragedy from her past. Kenneth stared at the locket, a sudden jolt of recognition running through him. The woman in the portrait, he'd seen her before. In an old photograph, tucked away in the prison archives. He'd dismissed it then, filed it away as insignificant. But now, seeing her face in the locket, the pieces began to fall into place. He remembered the name whispered in hushed tones, the rumors of a secret affair, a hidden treasure. "Your mother, her name was Ilara, wasn't it?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Isabella's eyes widened in surprise. "How did you know?" she asked, her gaze sharp and questioning. Kenneth hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. I overheard something. A conversation." He couldn't divulge the details, not yet. Kenzo remained silent, his presence a watchful shadow. He seemed to be assessing Kenneth, weighing his words, deciding whether to trust him. The air crackled with unspoken accusations and hidden agendas. Isabella met Kenneth's gaze, her expression unreadable. A complex mix of emotions flickered within her eyes, suspicion, hope, and a hint of desperation. "A conversation, you say?" she pressed, her voice carefully controlled. "About what?" Kenneth decided to take a leap of faith. He recounted the fragments of the overheard conversation, the whispers of a hidden map, a lost inheritance. As he spoke, he noticed a subtle shift in Isabella's demeanor. The initial guardedness seemed to melt away, replaced by a flicker of intense focus. Suddenly, Kenzo moved. With a swift, silent motion, he turned and melted back into the darkness, disappearing as quickly as he had appeared. Isabella watched him go, her expression resolute. "He'll be back," she stated, her voice firm. "He has information we need. And I believe you have a piece of the puzzle too, Kenneth." Kenneth hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "About the portrait in the archives. The woman, her name was Eleanor Vance. She disappeared 20 years ago. You bear a striking resemblance to her." Isabella's composure didn't waver, but a subtle tightening around her mouth betrayed her inner turmoil. 20 years is a long time," she replied, her voice cool. "And many women resemble one another." He pushed forward, sensing a fragile opening. Eleanor was researching a smuggling ring operating along the coast. She was close to uncovering something dangerous. Isabella's eyes flickered, a brief flash of something unreadable passing through them. Dangerous? What kind of dangerous? Kenneth leaned closer, his voice dropping. The kind that made her vanish without a trace. The kind that might still be active. He watched her intently, searching for any sign of recognition, any flicker of fear. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken history and buried secrets. The air in the room seemed to grow colder, charged with a palpable tension. Isabella finally met his gaze, her expression hardening. "I don't know anything about smugglers," she stated firmly.
"And I certainly don't know anyone named Eleanor Vance."
But the tremor in her voice betrayed her denial.
Kenneth wasn't convinced. He'd spent months researching Eleanor Vance's disappearance.
The details were too specific to be a coincidence. There was a specific type of knot she was studying, Kenneth continued, pulling a faded photograph from his pocket. A rare maritime knot used by a particular group, a group rumored to be involved in illegal trade. He showed her the photograph, a close-up of a complex knot. Isabella stared at it, her breath catching in her throat. Her fingers instinctively reached out, as if to touch the image. "Where did you get this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It was in Eleanor's personal files," Kenneth explained.
Files that were conveniently overlooked during the initial investigation. Files that someone wanted to keep hidden.
He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in.
"I believe Eleanor Vance didn't just disappear. She was silenced." Isabella turned away, walking towards the window.
The stormy sea reflected in her eyes, mirroring the turmoil within her. She clutched a small, intricately carved wooden box to her chest, hidden beneath her shawl. It was the box the locket had come from. They found themselves in a dimly lit bar, the air thick with cigarette smoke and hushed conversations.
Kenneth ordered a drink, watching Isabella carefully.
He noticed the way she fidgeted with the wooden box, the way her eyes darted around the room. "Why are you so hesitant to help?" he asked gently.
"If Eleanor Vance was in danger, wouldn't you want to know more?" Isabella took a slow sip of her drink, avoiding his gaze.
"Knowing more could be dangerous," she finally said.
"Some things are better left buried." Kenneth frowned. "Dangerous for whom?"
He leaned forward, his voice low.
"For me? For you? Or for someone else?" Isabella hesitated, then met his gaze.
"There are people who would prefer Eleanor's secrets to remain hidden," she admitted.
"People who are still very powerful."
A shadow crossed her face, a look of fear and determination battling for dominance. She looked around the bar, as if expecting someone to appear. The next day, Isabella led Kenneth to an antique map, spread out on a table in a dusty corner of her apartment. She traced a finger along the coastline, stopping at a small, isolated cove. "This is where she was last seen," she said, her voice hushed.
"Near Blackwood Cove." Kenneth studied the map intently. "Blackwood Cove, it's notorious. Rumored to be a haven for smugglers for centuries." Isabella nodded.
Eleanor was investigating a shipment that was supposed to pass through there.
A shipment of something valuable.
She paused, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and anger.
Something that someone wanted desperately to keep from being exposed. Kenneth felt a surge of adrenaline. This was getting closer. He could feel it.
"What kind of something?" he pressed. Isabella looked at him, a flicker of something akin to hope in her eyes.
"That's what we need to find out."
She glanced nervously towards the window, then back at the map.
"But we need to be careful. They're watching." Under the cloak of darkness, Isabella and Kenneth stood on the jagged rocks of Blackwood Cove. The waves crashed against the shore, a constant, rhythmic roar.
A small, battered boat bobbed in the water, its silhouette barely visible against the silvery moonlight.
"This is it," Isabella whispered, her voice tight with apprehension. "This is where it all began, and possibly ended."
Kenneth nodded, his hand resting on the hilt of the small knife he carried.
"Be careful," he said. "We don't know what we're walking into." Isabella took a deep breath, steeling herself. "Eleanor was brave," she said. "I have to be brave too."
She stepped towards the boat, her eyes fixed on the shadowy figures waiting for them. The air was thick with anticipation, with the scent of salt and secrets.
The night held its breath, waiting to reveal the truth.
The journey had just begun. The boat was smaller than it appeared from a distance, a fragile vessel against the churning sea. Isabella secured a worn coil of rope to the dock, her movements quick and precise despite the tremor in her hands.
"This is it," she said,
her voice barely audible above the wind and waves.
She used this to escape. Kenneth hesitated. Are you sure about this, Isabella? It feels reckless.
She met his gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of determination and fear.
We don't have a choice, Kenneth. If we don't find what's in that box, everything we've been working for will be for nothing. And she deserves justice.
He nodded slowly, understanding the weight of her words. He helped her climb into the boat, the wooden planks groaning under their weight. The lantern cast dancing shadows on their faces, highlighting the grim set of their jaws. They pushed off from the shore, the small boat battling against the waves, heading towards the dark unknown. The air grew colder, the storm intensifying, mirroring the uncertainty in their hearts.
The coastline receded behind them, swallowed by the encroaching darkness.
Inside the box, nestled amongst faded velvet lining, were not jewels or gold, but something far more personal. Bundles of yellowed letters, tied with a silk ribbon, lay carefully arranged. A tarnished silver locket, intricately engraved with floral patterns, caught the lantern light. And beneath the letters, a small, intricately carved key, made of dark metal. Isabella's fingers trembled as she lifted the letters, her eyes scanning the faded script. These are letters from her sister, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. They were exchanged before she disappeared. They spoke of a secret, a hidden location. Kenneth leaned closer, peering at the letters.
What kind of secret?
Isabella began to read, her voice catching on the words. The letters detailed a disagreement over a family inheritance, a bitter feud that escalated into something darker. The sister hinted at a valuable object, hidden away to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. The key, Isabella realized, must unlock the location of this object. They searched the cove meticulously, their lantern light dancing across the jagged rocks and hidden crevices.
The waves continued to crash against the shore, a relentless soundtrack to their hunt.
Isabella held the locket in her hand, turning it over and over, as if trying to glean a clue from its design. The sister mentioned a landmark, she said, her voice strained.
A rock formation shaped like a serpent's head.
She said the hiding place was near it.
Kenneth scanned the coastline, his eyes searching for the distinctive shape.
After what seemed like an eternity, he spotted it, a dark, serpentine silhouette rising from the rocks. There, he exclaimed, pointing towards a narrow opening in the cliff face. They approached cautiously, the air growing colder and damper as they neared the entrance. A sense of foreboding settled over them, a feeling that they were close to uncovering something dangerous. The opening led to a small, hidden chamber carved into the cliff face. A heavy wooden door, almost invisible against the rock, blocked their path.
Isabella's heart pounded as Kenneth inserted the key into the lock.
It turned with a soft click, and the door creaked open, revealing a dark, musty interior. Dust motes danced in the lantern light as they stepped inside. The chamber was small and circular, the walls lined with shelves. On one of the shelves sat a small, ornate chest. Isabella rushed forward, her hands trembling as she lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded satin, was not gold or jewels, but a single, antique music box. It was intricately carved with scenes of a seaside village, and looked incredibly old. Isabella wound the key, and the music box sprang to life. A delicate melody filled the chamber, a haunting tune that seemed to echo through the centuries. As the music played, a faint shimmer appeared in the air, coalescing into a ghostly image of a woman, the missing Isabella's sister. The image was fleeting, ethereal, but undeniably there. She looked at Isabella with sorrow in her eyes, then faded away like smoke. Kenneth stared in stunned silence, his jaw slack.
Did you see that?" he stammered. Isabella nodded, tears streaming down her face.
"She's trying to tell us something," she whispered.
"The music, it's the key to understanding."
The mystery deepened, the truth closer than ever, yet shrouded in an unsettling, spectral presence. The ghostly woman drifted closer, her form shimmering like heat haze. Her sorrow was palpable, a wave of grief washing over Isabella. "You have awakened me," she whispered, her voice like the chime of distant bells. "This locket, it holds a piece of my past, a betrayal that shattered my life."
Kenneth stepped forward, cautiously. "Who are you? What happened?"
The woman's gaze settled on the locket in Isabella's hand.
I am Ilara.
And the locket, it belonged to my betrothed, Lord Valerius. He promised me forever, but he plotted against me. He sought to steal a family heirloom, a powerful artifact hidden within these cliffs. Ilara's spectral hand reached out, hovering near the locket. He imprisoned me here, hoping to silence me, to keep my family's secrets buried. Isabella felt a surge of sympathy for the lost soul.
What secret? She asked gently.
Ilara's form flickered.
The secret of the Sunstone.
A gem of immense power, capable of both creation and destruction. Valerius believed it would grant him ultimate control. I vowed to protect it, even in death. A cold draft swept through the chamber. He never found it, but his descendants still search for it. They are the ones who have been drawn to this cove, seeking to unlock its power. Isabella examined the locket more closely. The miniature portrait within depicted a man of striking beauty, his eyes a startling shade of blue. He possessed a confident smile, yet there was a hint of something cold and calculating in his expression.
This is Lord Valerius, Ilara confirmed, as if reading Isabella's thoughts.
He was charming, charismatic, a master of deception. He used his allure to gain the trust of everyone around him, even those closest to him.
Isabella felt a chill run down her spine.
The man in the portrait seemed to gaze directly at her, his eyes holding a veiled warning.
Kenneth noticed Isabella's distress.
Are you all right? He asked, concerned. It's just his eyes, Isabella replied, her voice barely a whisper.
They feel unsettling. Ilara's spectral form seemed to grow fainter.
He was not to be trusted, she warned. He would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. And his descendants, they are just as ruthless. A sudden scraping sound echoed from the entrance of the chamber.
A dark shape materialized in the doorway, its features obscured by shadow.
Who's there?
Kenneth demanded, stepping protectively in front of Isabella.
The shadowy figure stepped into the dim light, revealing a tall, imposing man with a cruel smirk. He wore expensive clothes, but they were slightly disheveled, as if he had been searching for a long time. Looking for something? He sneered, his eyes scanning the chamber.
Perhaps a lost family heirloom? Or perhaps, a way to unlock untold power?
Isabella recognized the coldness in his gaze, the same calculating look she had seen in Lord Valerius's portrait. Who are you? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady.
My name is Julian Thorne, the man replied smoothly.
And I am a descendant of Lord Valerius. I've been searching for this place for years. I know the legends of the Sunstone, and I intend to claim it. Julian Thorne lunged forward, his hand outstretched, aiming to snatch the locket from Isabella's grasp.
Kenneth reacted instantly, shoving Isabella aside and intercepting Thorne's attack.
A brief struggle ensued, the chamber filled with the sound of clashing movements. Thorne was stronger than he appeared, his grip surprisingly firm. Isabella, regaining her composure, held the locket tightly, refusing to let go. You won't get it, she cried, her voice filled with determination. Ilara's spectral form flickered violently, as if trying to intervene.
Do not let him have it, she pleaded.
Kenneth managed to wrestle Thorne back, creating some distance between them.
We need to get out of here, he shouted.
This place is dangerous. Isabella remembered Ilara's words, a hidden passage. She frantically scanned the chamber, her eyes searching for anything unusual. Then, she noticed a faint inscription on the far wall, almost hidden by shadows. It was a series of symbols that seemed to resonate with the locket in her hand. Trusting her instincts, Isabella gently touched the locket to the inscription. A low rumble echoed through the chamber as a section of the wall slid open, revealing a narrow passage leading into darkness.
This way! Isabella exclaimed, pulling Kenneth and glancing back at the enraged Julian Thorne. Ilara said there was another way out. The ghostly figure of Ilara seemed to smile faintly as they disappeared into the hidden passage.
Isabella's fingers traced the unfamiliar symbols, a shiver running down her spine. They felt strangely warm to the touch, almost alive. The symbols seemed to pulse faintly, and the air around them shimmered. Kenneth, look, she exclaimed, her voice hushed with a mixture of excitement and apprehension.
Julian, momentarily stunned by Kenneth's intervention, recovered quickly and glared at them, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. "What is it?" he demanded, his voice laced with impatience. Kenneth, still alert, scanned the chamber, his hand instinctively reaching for the dagger at his belt. He didn't trust Thorn, not for a second. The symbols on the wall seemed to react to Isabella's touch, the golden glow intensifying. A section of the far wall, previously indistinguishable from the rest, began to slide inward, revealing a dark opening. A rush of cool, damp air wafted out, carrying with it the scent of earth and something else, something ancient and unknown. Thorn pushed past Kenneth, eager to see what lay beyond. "A secret passage," he breathed, his eyes gleaming with avarice. "I knew this place held more than just a trinket." Isabella hesitated. A sense of foreboding washed over her. This passage felt wrong, like stepping into a forgotten tomb. The passage descended steeply, the stone steps worn smooth by centuries of use. Flickering torches cast dancing shadows on the walls, revealing intricate carvings depicting strange creatures and forgotten rituals. The air grew colder with each step, and the scent of damp earth intensified, mingling with a metallic tang that made Isabella's stomach churn. Thorn, impatient as ever, hurried ahead, his footsteps echoing in the confined space. Kenneth followed closely, his dagger held ready. Isabella brought up the rear, her heart pounding in her chest. The carvings on the wall seemed to watch them, their silent gazes unnerving. She noticed that some of the carvings seemed to shift and change in the torchlight, creating an illusion of movement. It was as if the walls themselves were alive. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the darkness ahead, followed by the sound of something heavy dragging itself across the stone floor. Thorn stopped abruptly. "What was that?" he whispered, his bravado momentarily gone. Kenneth tensed, his hand tightening on his dagger. "Stay alert," he warned. "Something's down here with us." The growl came again, closer this time, accompanied by the scraping of claws on stone. Isabella held up the crystal, its soft glow pushing back the oppressive darkness. The light revealed a narrow tunnel, the walls slick with moisture. The growling had stopped, but the air remained thick with tension. She moved slowly, cautiously, her senses on high alert. Kenneth and Thorn flanked her, their weapons drawn, their eyes scanning the shadows. The tunnel twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the earth. The carvings on the walls became more elaborate, depicting scenes of sacrifice and ancient power. Isabella felt a growing sense of unease. This wasn't just a simple passage, it was a place of ritual, a place of darkness. She noticed a pattern in the carvings, a recurring symbol that seemed to represent a serpent coiled around a staff. It was the same symbol that was etched on the locket. "This is unsettling," she murmured. Thorn scoffed. "Just old decorations. Don't let it get to you." But even he seemed a little less confident. The crystal in Isabella's hand pulsed brighter, as if responding to the energy of the passage. They rounded a bend, and the tunnel opened into a large cavern. The cavern was vast and imposing, filled with towering stone pillars that disappeared into the darkness above. In the center of the cavern stood a massive altar, stained with what looked like dried blood. And before the altar, a shadowy figure stood chanting in a language Isabella didn't recognize, a guttural, rhythmic drone that vibrated in her bones. The figure was tall and cloaked, its face obscured by shadow. Runes were carved into the altar, glowing with an eerie green light. Thorn gasped. "What is that?" he whispered, his voice filled with awe and fear. Kenneth stepped forward, ready to confront the figure. "Who are you? What do you want?" The chanting intensified, and the runes on the altar began to glow brighter. The shadowy figure raised its arms, and a swirling vortex of energy appeared above the altar. Isabella felt a powerful pull towards the figure, as if something within her was being drawn to it. The locket around her neck suddenly felt hot, as if it were reacting to the energy in the cavern. Instinctively, Isabella reached for the locket, a surge of energy flowing from it into her hand. The energy collided with the swirling vortex above the altar, disrupting the shadowy figure's ritual. The chanting faltered, and the runes on the altar flickered and died. The cavern began to shake violently, dust and debris falling from the ceiling. The shadowy figure staggered backward, its form flickering and unstable.
No, it shrieked, its voice a distorted echo. The locket in Isabella's hand pulsed with power, bathing the cavern in a brilliant golden light. The shaking intensified, and a section of the cavern wall crumbled, revealing a hidden chamber behind it.
The figure, weakened and disoriented, glared at Isabella.
"You haven't seen the last of me," it hissed, before dissolving into shadow and disappearing into the newly revealed chamber. Kenneth rushed to Isabella's side. "Are you all right?" he asked, concern etched on his face. Isabella, still clutching the locket, nodded, her eyes wide with shock.
I think we just stopped something very dangerous."
The shadowy figure hissed, its voice a rasping echo that seemed to vibrate through the very stone of the cavern.
"You cannot stop what is destined, little light."
The tendril snaked forward, seeking to ensnare Isabella, to pull her into the darkness that clung to the edges of the cavern. She stumbled back, the crystal held aloft, its glow intensifying. The energy from the locket pulsed, a shield of shimmering light deflecting the shadowy grasp. It wasn't a complete barrier, wisps of darkness still brushed against her skin, leaving a chilling sensation in their wake. She could feel the figure's power, ancient and malevolent, a force that threatened to overwhelm her. The altar pulsed with a faint, crimson light, mirroring the glow in the figure's eyes. Isabella knew, with a certainty that settled like ice in her veins, that this was more than just a ritual. This was an attempt to break something, to unleash something terrible upon the world. She had to find a way to disrupt it completely, to sever the connection between the figure and the altar. The locket felt warm against her palm, a comforting weight in the face of overwhelming dread. She needed to understand what the figure was doing, what it planned to unleash. Focusing on the crystal, Isabella closed her eyes, attempting to connect with the energy flowing through it. The swirling light intensified, coalescing into images, fleeting glimpses of a woman with kind eyes and a determined jaw. The woman seemed to be reaching out, a silent plea echoing in Isabella's mind. It was a memory, a fragment of the locket's history, a connection to the woman who had protected it for centuries. The woman's face flickered, then vanished, replaced by a vision of the cavern as it once was, vibrant with life, not stained with blood. Lush vegetation covered the stone, and a waterfall cascaded down the cavern walls. The altar was different, crafted from gleaming white stone, radiating a gentle warmth. This wasn't just a place of dark rituals, it had been a sanctuary, a place of healing and power.
The contrast was stark, a testament to the corruption that had taken hold. Isabella felt a surge of determination.
She wasn't just fighting a shadowy figure, she was fighting to reclaim this place, to restore its former glory. The woman in the vision seemed to approve, a subtle nod of encouragement. With a surge of adrenaline, Isabella hurled the crystal towards the altar. It soared through the air, a beacon of hope in the oppressive darkness. As it struck the stone, the crystal erupted in a blinding flash of light, a wave of pure energy washing over the cavern. The shadowy figure shrieked, its form flickering and dissolving under the intense radiance. The tendrils of darkness recoiled, dissipating like smoke in the wind. The crimson light from the altar sputtered and died, plunging the cavern into near darkness once more, though the crystal's residual glow lingered. Isabella shielded her eyes, the heat from the explosion radiating against her skin. The air crackled with energy, and the scent of ozone filled her nostrils. When she could see again, the shadowy figure was gone, vanished without a trace. The altar was still stained, but the crimson glow had faded, replaced by a dull, lifeless stone. The connection had been broken. The light subsided, leaving Isabella standing amidst the lingering echoes of the explosion. The cavern was silent, the oppressive tension replaced by an eerie stillness. She slowly lowered her hands, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The altar, though still marred by the crimson stains, no longer pulsed with malevolent energy. As the dust settled, Isabella noticed something she hadn't seen before. Behind the altar, concealed by shadows and cleverly disguised, a hidden passage had opened. A dark tunnel beckoned, promising further mysteries and untold dangers. The air emanating from the tunnel felt colder, heavier, carrying with it a faint whisper of something ancient and unknown. It was a new path, a new challenge. Isabella knew that the battle wasn't over, but she had gained a crucial victory. Taking a deep breath, Isabella stepped into the darkness of the newly revealed tunnel. The locket felt warm against her chest, a source of comfort and strength. The faint, ethereal light it emitted pushed back the shadows, revealing a narrow passage carved into the rock. The walls were damp and slick, covered in strange, glowing fungi. The air was thick with the scent of earth and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet. As she ventured deeper, the tunnel began to slope downwards, leading her into the heart of the mountain. The silence was broken only by the drip, drip, drip of water and the echo of her own footsteps. She felt a presence, a subtle awareness that she was not alone. It wasn't hostile, but watchful, as if observing her progress. Isabella tightened her grip on the locket, preparing for whatever lay ahead. The journey was far from over. The air hung heavy and damp, thick with the scent of ancient stone and something else, something subtly metallic. Isabella moved slowly, her hand trailing along the cold walls, searching for any sign of what lay ahead. The tunnel twisted and turned, a labyrinth carved deep within the earth. The locket pulsed faintly against her skin, a reassuring warmth in the unsettling silence. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, a prickling sensation at the back of her neck. The tunnel seemed to stretch on endlessly, each turn revealing only more of the same oppressive darkness. A faint dripping sound echoed around her, each drop a tiny hammer blow in the profound quiet. She wondered what secrets this hidden passage held, and whether she was truly prepared for what she might find. The weight of the crystal, now safely secured, felt less significant than the growing unease within her. This wasn't just about stopping the ritual, it felt like she was stepping into something far older, something far more powerful. The air grew colder, and a whisper seemed to brush against her ear, too faint to understand, yet undeniably present. Isabella stopped, holding her breath, straining to hear. Nothing. Just the dripping water and the frantic beat of her own heart. The tunnel opened abruptly into a vast cavern, the air immediately colder and heavier. A pool of shimmering, obsidian-like water dominated the center of the space, its surface undisturbed except for the faintest ripples. Around the pool, intricate symbols were etched into the stone floor, glowing with a faint, internal luminescence. And then she saw him. A figure cloaked entirely in shadow, standing silently beside the water. No features were visible, only the deep darkness of the cloak obscuring everything. He seemed to radiate an unnatural stillness, a sense of ancient power. Isabella froze, her hand instinctively reaching for the small dagger hidden beneath her cloak. The locket pulsed faster, its light flaring momentarily as if sensing the danger. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. The figure didn't respond, remaining motionless. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then, a voice, smooth and resonant, seemed to emanate from the shadows themselves. "You have interfered," it said, the words echoing around the cavern. "You have disrupted the balance." Isabella felt a chill run down her spine. This was no ordinary guardian, this was something far more formidable. The figure in shadow slowly raised a hand, gesturing towards the pool. As he did, the water began to swirl, the surface becoming agitated and turbulent. The glowing symbols around the pool pulsed with increasing intensity. Then, from the depths of the water, spectral figures began to emerge. They were translucent, shimmering forms, vaguely humanoid in shape, their faces obscured by swirling mist. They drifted upwards, their silent presence filling the cavern with an unnerving energy. Isabella felt a wave of nausea, a sense of being overwhelmed by something ancient and otherworldly. The spectral figures seemed to regard her with cold, empty eyes. The air crackled with power, and the locket on her chest grew hot. "These are the guardians of this place," the shadowed figure said, his voice echoing with an unnatural resonance. "They will ensure that your interference has consequences." One of the spectral figures drifted towards her, its form coalescing slightly, revealing a glimpse of a sorrowful face. Isabella braced herself, ready to fight, but a strange sense of sadness washed over her, weakening her resolve. Isabella took a shaky breath, trying to regain her composure. She noticed something in the shadowed figure's posture, a subtle tension that wasn't purely hostile. "I don't want to cause harm," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I only want to stop the ritual. It's dangerous." The figure remained silent for a moment, then slowly lowered his hand. "The ritual is not the problem," he said, his voice softening slightly.
It is a seal. A necessary barrier.
He gestured towards the swirling water. This pool contains a power that must be contained. A power that, if unleashed, would consume this world.
Isabella frowned, confused. But why is it hidden? Why is it kept locked away?
Because, the figure replied, it is too dangerous for mortals to wield. The crystal you destroyed was meant to prevent its awakening.
You have inadvertently weakened the seal.
He wasn't malevolent, she realized, but a guardian, bound to protect something far greater than himself.
A glimmer of understanding passed between them. So, what can we do? Isabella asked.
The figure considered her for a moment. There is a way to reinforce the seal, he said.
An ancient artifact, hidden within the ruins of the sunken city.
But it is guarded by powerful forces.
He paused. I cannot leave this place. I am bound here. Isabella nodded, a sense of grim determination settling within her.
Then we'll go together, she said. I have skills you may not possess, and you have knowledge I lack.
We can do this.
The figure inclined his head slightly.
Very well, he said. But be warned. The journey to the sunken city is fraught with peril.
And the forces guarding the artifact will not surrender easily. He extended a shadowy hand.
I am known as Kalen. Let us begin. Isabella took his hand, a sense of hope flickering within her.
The fight wasn't over, but now, she wasn't alone. They had a shared purpose, a common enemy, and a world to save. The figure opened the box, revealing a crystalline amulet pulsing with soft, golden light.
This is the key of Ethel, he explained, his voice now resonating with a hint of weariness. It will amplify the existing seal, strengthening it against the encroaching darkness. But the ritual requires a sacrifice, not of life, but of power. A willingness to relinquish a part of oneself. Isabella looked at the amulet, then back at the swirling pool. She understood.
The seal wasn't just a barrier, it was a symbiotic relationship, requiring constant energy.
I understand, she said, a newfound resolve in her voice. I will do it.
She reached out, and as her fingers brushed the amulet, a wave of energy flowed through her, a gentle draining of her inherent magical abilities. The pool's turbulence subsided, the glowing symbols solidifying into a protective lattice.
The figure nodded, a faint smile gracing his lips. The seal is reinforced. For now. But the darkness will always seek a way.
He turned, his form beginning to dissipate back into the shadows.
Remember, the balance must always be maintained. With a final, lingering look, he vanished completely.
The golden light in Isabella's hand pulsed softly, a gentle echo of the amulet's power. She looked at her hand, a sense of loss mingling with a profound sense of accomplishment. The ability to conjure flames, to manipulate the elements, it was all diminished, yet she felt no regret. The darkness she had faced was a far greater threat than the loss of her power. She had chosen to sacrifice something of herself for the greater good, and in doing so, she had discovered a strength she never knew she possessed. The weight of responsibility settled upon her, but it was a weight she was willing to bear. She was no longer just a sorceress, she was a guardian, a protector of the delicate balance between worlds. The sunken city, once a place of forgotten horrors, now held a new significance, a testament to the sacrifices made to preserve life. A single tear traced a path down her cheek, not of sadness, but of quiet understanding. The battle was won, but the watch must continue. The world was safe, for now. And that was all that mattered. Above the waves, life continued as it always had. The sun shone brightly, illuminating rolling hills and verdant forests. Children laughed as they played on the beaches, oblivious to the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. The world was unaware of the sacrifice made, the battle fought in the depths. But Isabella knew. And she would continue to watch, to protect, to ensure that the balance remained unbroken. The faint golden glow emanating from the sunken city was a silent promise, a testament to the enduring power of courage and selflessness. The world was safe, but the vigilance never ceased. The memory of the shadowed figure, the swirling pool, and the key of Ethel would forever be etched in her heart, a reminder of the day she saved her world. And in that quiet understanding, she found a new purpose, a new strength, a new hope. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the beach. Isabella stood silhouetted against the fiery sky, the golden light in her hand now a mere glimmer. She breathed deeply, the salty air filling her lungs. The weight of her sacrifice was still there, but it was no longer a burden. It was a part of her, a reminder of the strength she had found in the face of darkness. She looked out at the ocean, vast and unknowable, a constant reminder of the mysteries that lay hidden beneath the waves. The battle was over, but the journey had just begun. She was ready. She would continue to guard the balance, to protect the world from the encroaching shadows, until her last breath. For she was the guardian, the protector, the silent sentinel of a world unaware of the sacrifices made to keep it safe.
The darkness may return, but so would she. The sunken city rested in silent slumber, bathed in the ethereal glow of the moon.
The key of Ethel pulsed faintly within its heart, a beacon of hope in the darkness. The seal held, for now.
But the shadows lingered, waiting for their opportunity.
The world slept, unaware of the constant vigilance required to maintain its fragile peace. And in the depths, Isabella stood guard, a silent sentinel, forever bound to the fate of the world she had saved. The cycle continued, the balance maintained, the darkness held at bay. A testament to courage, sacrifice, and the enduring power of hope in the face of despair. The story was not over, but for now, peace reigned.
A fragile peace, but peace nonetheless.